almost gave up on this drone. What happened, I flew it with a 3S battery last week, directly after flying my new build 5-inch with the same battery, and it felt horrible. It was tipping backwards and forwards. I wonder if a more powerful battery, 4S, but a shorter form factor, which is this is 1500 versus the 2200, whether it be better for a centre of gravity, and it proved to be the case. It's quite a bit better. Still not totally convinced it's good, but on the way. The other thing I did was I was just browsing AliExpress and saw our Starlight cameras at just under $12 a pop. So I went out and bought a couple. So the other point of this flight was to test the new camera. So I'll show you the results in a moment. So the camera came as PAL, what's a 4:3 ratio. So that's what it started off with, because it's slightly better resolution than NTSC. But I used the editor to stretch it out to 16:9, which is good because actually it's tall and thin in its native resolution. This gets a better proportional image. So it's a bit better. I'm noticing the image is a bit better than it used to be in terms of vibration, but it's still not good. There's still a bit of flicker and stuff. I kept this running because a lot of native birds, the native parrot, the Galahs, pink and white bird, they often have huge flat flocks. And unlike some things like magpies and hawks, they're not particularly aggressive. So if they see something interesting in the sky, rather than trying to smash it out of the sky, they just pirouette around you. In fact, on one occasion actually flew with them for a while and they weren't too fussed at all. So I thought I'd keep this in just to give you an idea of the sort of lovely things that can happen flying around here. But as I say, for the actual, the image quality is great. For a $12 camera, you can't fault it. Though as I say, I still think there's too much bounce in the image. So I brought it down, and here's some stats on how it went. So took it home and had to think about what I could do. So this is what I think is probably the final version of my camera damping experiment. What I realised with the previous version was that it could still transmit vibrations from the frame, the support arms on the side, down to the top. So I've just capped it off with a bit of foam on the top, and I think that's made a slight difference. So might look a bit weird, but does the job. So this is the next flight with the damping of the camera, and although initially you can't tell, I think in fact the image stabilisation is looking a lot better, considering this is unstabilised footage from a low-res FPV camera. The unfortunate thing was I had trouble with the GPS. In fact, I've probably changed it over, but it took ages it couldn't find a satellite, so after a while I got sick of it and just flew without the GPS part of it. And the other thing, of course, I'm in angle mode, because with the GPS I forgot to flick it to acro mode, so it's a bit like that episode of Red Dwarf where Cat thought he'd played the whole game in Pratt mode. I should have realised what was going on, but I didn't. I guess I was so fixated on looking at what sort of image I could see in my goggles. So I flew around for a bit, still concerned about the GPS situation. You can see it flashing away to tell me I don't have the minimum 8 to get a lock. So there's not going to be any distance specs. And then I noticed I suddenly had 10 satellites. So I brought it down, and here's the stats. You can see no distance information, but everything else is there, the max speed and voltage and so on. And just flick the switch on it, and armed, and I have a home point. So for the rest of the flight, I had a satellite lock. Though worryingly, although I had 10 when I took off, it dropped to 9, and at some points during the flight it actually dropped back to 7. However, it had enough information to give me distance figures at the end of the flight. Again, still in angle mode, still didn't realise what was going on. I should have, because when I tried to accelerate hard, I noticed the nose was pointing down and I couldn't really do anything about it. But what was interesting was I hit 90 kilometres an hour, which is probably faster than I've ever flown in angle mode before. But it's a mistake I've seen others made. But again, I should have sensed it, because the moment you pull off the throttle, the nose tends to bob up. It's just the way things are in angle mode. But overall, it feels a lot more comfortable flying with this FPV camera with a cleaner image than I had before. So I'm going to apply the same, wrap the camera totally in foam with no hard connection to the frame on my 5-inch. So that's my next little project. I'll probably make a video on that, but we'll see how we go. So here we are. Nose still pointing down because I'm throttling up, because I'm flying into the wind here. So to be fair, when it hit 90 kilometres an hour, it was had a tailwind. But here we are, we're just forging up into the wind. In terms of stability of the drone, how much is the frame, and maybe I'd do better with rigid carbon, I'm amused to see that people are into the DJI 04 Pro are now having all sorts of problems with the gyroscopes. And looking at some of the footage, some of them would quite admit that you do take stabilisation for granted to some extent. Any kind of frame, if you do certain manoeuvres, you can see a bit of vibration. So I feel a bit better about my choice of frame and how it's going. As I say, without the variable, the switching for the VTX that I had with Zeus Nano, going from 25 milliwatts to 350 milliwatts, I just got rid of that and I show the throttle setting in the middle of the screen, 59% throttle, 50, and coming in for a landing. So quite happy with that experimentation, and I think these cameras, great value. They do everything I want to do.